and we kind of talked about this earlier in hits and misses. And again, I likened it to the Trey Lance thing, where it's like if Trey Lance can work with Kyle Shanahan, who's been very quarterback friendly, Matt Schaub, Matt Ryan, Jimmy Garoppolo, now Brock Purdy, Mr. Relevant, they've all worked in that system, right? And there's an argument that Trey Lance is more physically gifted than all of them. Bigger, stronger, moves a little bit better, has a bigger arm than pretty much all of them. But that's why the quarterback position is not all about skill. And that brings me to Baker, where it's like you were in Cleveland, you had a great supporting cast. I think Myles Garrett's a little overrated, but still a top 3 to 5 pass rusher in football. Good secondary, good linebackers. At the time, Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski. Two good backs. Offensive line was stacked. Two good tight ends. Good wide receivers. And at the end of the day, he had that one good run, but he kind of talked himself out of the starting quarterback role. And blaming the medical staff and Duke Johnson this. It's like, dude, it's not all about your talent. He is, without a doubt, one of the 32 most talented quarterbacks. Now, I always thought he was overrated and it was a reach at one from a talent perspective. He's a little bit over 6 foot, not quite as mobile as I'd like. His arm's good, not special. He's accurate, not Drew Brees accurate. But he's certainly one of the most talented 32 quarterbacks in football in terms of his on-field production. I don't think that's all that deniable, right? I mean, look, there's guys in this league that are starting right now. Look, we don't know what Sam Howell is, but what we think he is, Baker's better than. Jacoby Brissett has started for a couple teams. Baker's better than that. But at the end of the day, it's not all about that talent, and Baker Mayfield has not been able to get it done in terms of being a leader, winning, leading teams. And I do think there's an argument. You look around football, what NFL quarterbacks have gone to national powers, ran the table, won the national championship, and then transferred it over to being a really good starting quarterback? Trevor Lawrence, that's the list, right? Everybody goes, Wyoming, Texas Tech, going 6-6 every year, running for your life. Big Ben, Miami of Ohio, right? Like, facing that adversity can help you. And same thing with Baker, right? You come in, dude, you don't got to worry about getting sacked. You have the best offensive line in football. you got 2 or 3 really good wide receivers, 2 great tight ends as safety valves, 2 really good backs. You don't even have to throw 30 times a game. Throw 22 times a game on 3rd and 1. Good defense, good coach, good scheme. So going from that to then Carolina, not as much talent. Matt Rule was kind of up in the air. He's on the hot seat, ends up getting fired. And now this leaves you in Tampa Bay. Is Tampa Bay's roster better than Cleveland's was? Not really. I mean, you could argue their top 2 receivers are more high-end, but the depth isn't there. The offensive line, yes, although good, is dealing with injuries. The defense is fine. Coach is not nearly as good. Defensive guy in Todd Bowles. You look at his record, he doesn't win enough football games point blank. He's probably the leading candidate to be the first head coach fired. In terms of Vegas odds, I think he's top 3. So can he now go to an unstable situation where some people actually expect them to tank, and can you get it done and win some football games? My argument would be probably no. I think early in the season, they have a fairly tough schedule in the first about 10 weeks. If they're 3-7, 4-6, walls are going to come caving in a little bit. Media is going to get on them. There's a real chance that Kyle Trask starts at some point this year. And we all know when the media comes after Baker, he tends to go right back at him, and we know that that's not good as an NFL franchise quarterback. So it just, I think there's a lot of problems here, despite the roster not actually being as bad as it may seem. So we'll see. I don't have high expectations for this team. I think it's the last place, 3rd place team, somewhere around there. I don't think they make the playoffs even in the weaker NFC. But I am intrigued to watch Baker and watch the situation unfold. I think it's one of the only reasons I'll turn on a Tampa Bay Buccaneers game sometime this year.
Yeah, you touched on it right there. What's going to happen when the media comes caving in on Baker? It's going to get really, really hostile. He doesn't generally handle that well. He's never proved to. I don't want to say that's the only thing. There are many things that could go wrong here and that I see going wrong here. I do think we will end up seeing Kyle Trask. I think you kind of also have to evaluate him. I mean, if Baker's not playing as he should or as you want him to, you kind of have to evaluate Trask and like what you have there at least. Because the quarterback draft coming up, I mean, I would put Tampa Bay in that list of teams that needs a franchise guy. They're not going to roll with Baker or Kyle.
Right. We know that Baker's not going to be their franchise guy going forward.
Yes.
So it would benefit them more to lose, to be quite honest with you. If you know Baker's not going to be your guy, I know that NFL teams don't tank, but it's like, would you rather have a 10-7 year with Baker or tank and get Drake May or Caleb Williams? Like,
off the top of your head, do you know if they have like a lot of draft capital coming up? Or did they mortgage some of that for Tom Brady?
I know they mortgaged some of that for Tom Brady. Let's look up Tampa Bay.
Because if they don't have many picks, then that gets tough.
Draft.
Right, because that
picks.
roster, we've talked about it, that roster is not horrible.
So in 2024, okay, here's their future draft picks. 2024, they have 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 7th. So they have, 6 picks. They just don't have their 5th round pick.
Okay.
And then 2025, they have all 7 picks. So.
Okay.
It's yeah, no, I think they would be, it's certainly feasible for them to lose enough games, use their 1st round pick this year, maybe trade 2025s, move up if you have to. It's certainly possible. It's weird. I was thinking about this while you were talking. Baker Mayfield plays a lot like a backup. Like, Baker for a game or two is pretty decent. We saw him with the Rams late in the season.
Yeah, when he came in and just inserted a couple guys.
Right, and we know McVay is an offensive genius, but we also know that they didn't have a ton of offense. Cooper Kupp was hurt. I think Van Jefferson was their number 1, which he's a fine 2 or 3. He's not a number 1.
No, not even
offensive
close.
line was in shambles.
Yeah.
And he was able to come in and win a game or two. But then over the course of a season, you kind of see the flaws of Baker, kind of play itself, extrapolate over the course of a season.
Everything seems to snowball, yeah.
Yeah, right. And you're right, it's the snowball effect. It's like, can he play for a game or two, win, maybe he loses, then goes back to the bench and it's fine? Yes. But if he starts to lose, and then he loses again, and then it just keeps going downhill, next thing you know, he's not viable for a 17-game season.
Yeah, it gets
It's weird, though,
quick.
because he doesn't have the demeanor to be a backup. He sees himself as, like, too big of a name. Right? Kind of like Cam Newton being a backup. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it would never work.
Like Baker, I just don't think Baker would work as a backup, but his play dictates that he'd be a pretty good backup. Yeah, like a Teddy Bridgewater. He could come in and win you, win 3 or 4 games. Taysom Hill was pretty good.
Yeah.
As a backup fill-in guy, but I just don't think Baker's mentally built for that.
No, he would, I think, just cause more problems on the bench.
I would agree. He'd be a locker room issue more than he would help you.
Big-time liability.
Yeah, I mean, you signed him for a 2-year contract to be 2 years, I don't know. 2 years, $2 million. So, $1 million a year to be because he's a fairly high-end backup.
Yeah.
I don't know what a high-end backup makes, say $1 million or $2 million a year. I mean, what's he going to start 3 games? Is the detriment that he may provide to your locker room worth, say, 2 wins out of those 3 games? Probably not.
Plus, I mean, if you're rolling with Kyle Trask and Baker as your backup, you're probably going to end up seeing Baker at some point anyway. Because, like, I don't.
Kyle Trask isn't very good either.
No, I don't have like the highest projections on him. So
Yeah.
even if Baker was a backup, he would probably end up getting more playing time than we think. But
I think it's the right decision. I think he's a better quarterback than
yeah,
Kyle Trask.
it's the right decision if you want to win.
It's just interesting to see how it plays out, and if so now say when's the deadline? Week 10, week 9?
Yeah, week.
So
10.
somewhere on there. What if they're 2-7? You turn it over to Trask, you deal some guys, you get some draft capital, and you just hope to get one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the draft next year.
Just kind of play it by ear. I mean, I don't think you're going to like win anything big though. Like you're not. I guess that division, and when we predicted that division, if you can win 9 games, 10 games, you're winning the division.
Yes. But if you're 2-7, it's a lot easier to say, guys, let's reboot this thing. Like let's trade Evans or Godwin.
But hey, if you're 6-4 and you only need to win 4 more games the back half of the season to make,
it's very hard to tell an NFL franchise. I know you've won 5 games out of your first 7 or 8, but we're going to reboot this thing anyway.
No, that would never fly.
Right, and especially in that division where it's like, oh man, we could actually make the playoffs. Even if you don't think for the next 5 years that's the best thing for your franchise, you're not going to be able to convince an NFL franchise that when they're within striking distance of the playoffs to reboot it and tank it. It's never going to work.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I agree. Guys, that's all we have